Canada is known the world over for the quality of its beer. Our brewmasters are some of the most experienced at their craft. They work every day to improve the quality of the beer, coming up with new Pilsner, red ale, wheat beers, stouts, and much more. Here's how they do it. It all starts in the prairies, where farmers grow what is widely recognized as the highest quality malting barley. It's the perfect habitat to grow the premium grain used to make beer. Just enough sun, just enough rain. Once the barley is harvested, that's when maltsters come in. Their job is to transform the barley into malt. This process involves soaking the grain, called steeping, 2 or 3 times to allow the grain to absorb moisture. It can then start to sprout or germinate. Once it reaches a certain moisture level, the grain is air dried over a few days and shipped to the brewers to make beer. When it arrives at the brewery, the malt is poured into large silos and then made into very fine particles. This process is called milling. It then goes into a mashing tun, a large beer cask for, you guessed it, mashing. This is the process whereby malt particles are mixed in with water. Typically, a mash will be 3 parts water to 1 part malt and will be held at around 65 degrees Celsius. Mashing usually takes about an hour. The mix is then sent to a different tun, which, even though from the outside looks very similar to the mashing tun, is the lautering tun. This is where the mash is filtered. The liquid part continues along in the brewing process. The remainder, called spent grains, are sent to local farmers for cattle feed. Next, in a large boiling kettle, brewers will add the hops. This is a small green flower, but brewers usually use it in an oil form or in the shape of a small pellet. Hops is what gives beer the appropriate level of bitterness. We now have what is called hopped wort. Brewers will then refrigerate this hopped wort before adding yeast. Yeast is very important, as it will add a distinctive flavor to the beer. The next step is fermenting. Different types of beer will use different techniques. For example, an ale will see the yeast sit at the top of the fermenting tank and take only a few days to ferment at a temperature around 20 degrees. While lagers will see the yeast go towards the bottom of the tank and take up to several weeks at only around 6 degrees. The fermentation process stops once it reaches the right alcohol percentage, 4%, 5%, 6%, whatever the recipe calls for. The spent yeast can then be used for medical products. The beer must then age for a number of days in conditioning or aging tanks. This is often anywhere between 10 to 12 days, but can last up to 60 days for certain specialty beers. The beer is then filtered to remove CO2 and is now ready to package. Brewers have bottling, canning, and keg lines right there in the brewery, which allows them to adapt to the various packaging preferences of their customers. Many also wash their bottles and kegs on site, as brewers are very environmentally conscious. They use very efficient lines designed to use as little water as possible during bottle washing. The beer is then poured into the bottles, kegs, and cans. These containers are all environmentally friendly, as the bottles and kegs are reused and cans recycled. The bottles are capped, the can lids are sealed, and they're ready to be packaged into various formats and shipped to your favorite stores and restaurants all across the country. This is where you come in, enjoying beer on its own, with friends, at sporting events, barbecues, and many other venues. The different flavors available make beer the perfect drink to accompany any meal. So, here's to beer. Cheers.